first discussion where we're introducing two guys. I guess we'll do it as interactive as possible. I'll ask you questions, you ask me questions. This content will connect with.
Maybe we should introduce the channel first.
What is the channel?
Well, the channel is this two guys, isn't it?
That's all it is. It's just two guys. It's two guys who have thoughts and ideas that may be a benefit for others.
Yeah, exactly. Exploring life. We can say spirituality, spiritual awakening. So the channel's name is essentially two guys, and it's Allan and myself, Benedict, that are going to sit down and have open conversations about life, about love, about relationships, about what it means to be a human being incarnated on this planet, what it means to have awareness of spirit and the spiritual reality, the spiritual dimension, and also eventually what it means to be on a spiritual journey, let's say. This is kind of how I see it.
I see it similarly, just with less structure, to be honest. I have this idea of subjects and that we'll just feel comfortable discussing them. And different thoughts and ideas will stream through us, drawn partly from our own experience and partly from our intuition. And that as we share these thoughts and ideas openly, that others will be drawn into the space and they'll contribute content through their own questions that will integrate into our discussions and keep carrying forward. It'll kind of grow organically in that sense.
Yeah, this is also what I feel it's an exploration of consciousness, really bringing awareness onto the human experience.
What could be better?
Well, I mean, it's a broad canvas that allows lots of exploration and can be, I think, part of what we've already discovered. It's a fun and fascinating journey most of the time.
Well, most of the time. But when you feel the call, you start to realize that there really is no other direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the difficulties you actually realize are just part of the process.
And you have to be at peace with that, because otherwise, what other choice do you have?
Yeah, exactly. You fall into the trap of a sense of perfection that's based around an expectation of how your reality has to be.
Yeah. And that is part of the journey into humility. You come to the conclusion, at least I have, that you're not really in control of your reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's very little you have control over,
Every day it gets to be smaller and smaller. What I realize that I actually have control over. Like I can control where I brush my teeth tonight or what I have for lunch. But the broader directionality of my incarnation is being dictated at a level that I don't really have purview into. And my only choice is whether I go along with that pulling, that current, or whether I kick and scream and try to resist an eventuality that somehow, some way will probably still lead me down that same path.
I mean, that's the freedom of duality, right? The free will, you have one or two choices, accept it or kick and scream against it. And, what do you learn from it?
And that's why I say even the free will is a bit of an illusion, because once you feel or hear that call, you don't really have a choice whether or not to heed it. It's calling to you. It is you.
It is. It is calling. Yeah. I think that's something maybe for me, I think that's an interesting subject to explore more in depth at some point, because also not everybody who's called remains.
No, I know there's peril, there's distractions, there's all sorts of things that interfere. Whether or not they had the choice, their directionality.
And it's like interference patterns.
And when you truly understand all the interference, you can still see the true self is feeling that call and desires to go down that path. And then there's all the 10,000 shiny objects and interdimensional and other forces that are trying to interfere with that call. But the free will been given to the call. It desires to go down that path. It's just a matter of whether interference is strong enough to get in the way. Think you have that free will because you're like, okay, I chose to go a different direction. It's like, no, you actually didn't make that choice. Something else commandeered your consciousness and redirected you away from the path that was calling you.
I think the free will is your capacity to choose whether you heed the call or not, and then basically how quickly you move in that direction, or how much you allow yourself to be distracted by various things. This is that kind of free will, but there again, you know, as you say, ultimately everything gets reabsorbed back to, well, back into the source that's calling. You know?
And I would love, we'll have this as a complete different. I feel like as we go through our conversations, different topics will just naturally arise.
That, you know, that's a fascinating discussion.
Fascinating conversation, because we've been told so long that, you know, you have this independence to dictate the directionality of your life. And there's a lot of reinforcement within pop culture and other cultural influences that are telling you to like make the most of your life and this and that. But in the context of consciousness, if you're intended to move down an awakened path and you resist that call, the amount of suffering that can build up in your incarnation can become so overwhelming that it's really a choice. It's not a choice. Whereas you move into alignment, there's still struggles and adversity because there's a lot of purification that ends up happening. But ultimately, that path of alignment is the path of least resistance. It's the highest and greatest good that can be realized for the incarnation. And so saying, okay, you can choose to not abide by the call and choose your free will to go the other direction, but that's a little bit of sadomasochism, because you're going to be really suffering as you try to go away from the call versus falling into alignment with that which is intended and not suffering. I don't know anybody that would choose by their own free will to suffer.
No, but then I think that also comes down to people's understanding of what is suffering. So again, that's another subject.
And that's where you and I come in. As we start to frame some of these conversations, like what is suffering? What is free will? What is it that you're really here to accomplish? What does it mean to be here?
Exactly. And I think that brings us on to also, Alan, you know, to say like really what's motivating this effort for you? What's the motivation in starting up these podcasts and conversations?
So I've been humbled enough by my journey to say that whatever motivation comes into my human mind, it's most likely incorrect. And so when you ask me, like, what's motivating this conversation, if be really sincere, I would say I just enjoy talking to you. Like, it's a natural joy or excitement that comes with the conversation. The byproduct of it is uploading something to a channel that somebody else may benefit from. But the essence of my knowing of alignment is that it excites me or it's joyous. And so I just fill my day with that which is joyous, and then allow for the current, which is a universal current, to connect all those dots and to move me forward. And so, insofar as this is another stone on the proverbial path that I enjoy stepping upon, if you and I have a beautiful vibration, ends up leading to an expansion of the content, which ends up engulfing more and more seekers who are drawn into this space, then, well, that's great. But for me to tell you right now that the motivation is to get like 10,000 views or something measurable in the physical realm, I would say, well, that's my human mind just distracting me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same for me as well. I'm not concerned by numbers, but I do feel that there is an inner calling, let's that there is a certain need right now in the human sphere of transformation, that the more that we talk about this as a collective, and of course, when we can connect with somebody and have a very rich and expansive conversation, it really helps the unifying of that field. And as you said, if it resonates with other people, and they find some value in it, or it raises some questions that they want to ask, or even maybe even come and share some things also at certain points, then I think it's all something incredibly beneficial, especially because from my own particular experiences and observations, there is a great misunderstanding of what the spiritual path is, for example.
And if you're in a position to help root out some of that misunderstanding, what better way to spend an hour now and again?
from what I see, there's many people still, wherever they are on their journey, you don't stop looking, you don't stop searching. It's the same. So I've been doing this over 20 years now, but still, you're always looking for something to take you further, the next step.
And it will carry right to the very end.
And it will carry on right till the very end. Yeah, exactly. And that's the beauty of it. Actually, that's part of actually what makes you feel alive. And even when you have that awareness that there's a certain level of consciousness that's always just aiming at fixed goals, that when I get there, I'll be happy. When I get there, I'll be complete. And whatever those goals are kind of rooted in some lower frequency or lower vibration, even when you reach that goal, you don't find that happiness and completeness or fulfillment that you're looking for.
No, because that goal was something outside of you.
Yeah.
So if the orientation starts with, I'm happy, I'm whole, I'm complete in this moment, and I have goals which I wish to accomplish, but that I don't need those goals to be accomplished to feel whole, happy, and complete, much better shot at living your best reality.
Absolutely.
And so if there's something about your being that doesn't make you invoke self-love and joy, then the journey inward should help root that out. That's actually our next conversation, is what is it to be on a spiritual path?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go into that.
Go into that, because that's a big part of the orientation. Are you looking outward or are you looking inward?
Yeah.
What is it that you seek for joy? Like, what is it that fulfills you? And so then if you go down the list here, so I think the who we're somewhat vague and circumvent about who we are, but we're Allan and Benedict. We're just two guys on a path with ideas that we want to share.
I think that's enough for now, isn't it? Yeah, we're Allan and Benedict, and yeah, just two, as we say, just two guys sharing and seeing where it goes.
What's motivating the effort? I think we covered that as well.
Yeah.
What will occur within what frequency? So this one is it's nebulous, because I actually don't really know. I know that man plans and God laughs. Like I feel that sincerely. So I like the idea of you and I uploading content like weekly, or maybe by month, bi-weekly, every couple weeks. Why do you suppose that we're undertaking this effort? My guess is, if I guess beyond the human mind and just feel into it, I would say that there's a resonance, like a frequency resonance that we're creating. And that even if the words don't necessarily connect with an audience, that there's a benefit just to being in the vibrational space, which is to say we're emanating a vibration just by virtue of you and I come, even though it's digital, so it's not as potent as if we were in person. But just by virtue of us putting out this frequency, it's a benefit for those who consume it or who are feeling this vibration.
Yeah, absolutely. And also for me, I think it's good and very, very beneficial to give a certain perspective. The journey itself, as I said, is very rich, it's very varied, and also a lot of people don't necessarily expect, again, it's because of how the consciousness works, that people often think that the spiritual journey is a kind of utopian path. Whereas in reality, it's maybe, let's say, it's a path towards a utopian reality, but which requires actually a lot of deconstruction of a lot of false understandings, a lot of false identity. And I think for me also, this why is actually really putting that perspective out there to help people realize that what they're experiencing right now, wherever they are on the journey, whether this is of interest to them or not, whether they're kind of resonating with some things we say and it's giving them some insights or giving them some impulses, is that everything that's happening right now, if you're able to look at it correctly, is a necessity.
At a global level or for an individual, or both?
Both. I mean, because if we speak globally, then globally we talk about humanity and we talk about the planet. Well, then it is the sum of the parts. So the collective is the sum of the parts. So all of the individual experiences make up the collective experience.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a degree of necessity when it comes to the purification, which is the uprooting of the qualities, the low vibrational tendencies that are otherwise moving you down the wrong path.
Absolutely. And I think it's also, part of the lesson, which is also something we will dig into deeper into one of the other episodes, let's say, of actually really understanding what it means to be incarnated in human form and what it means to actually be human.
It's a good conversation. You'd think that would be taught in school at some point. I think one of the other possible byproducts is that if I have, just by virtue of us working together, if there are egoic qualities, which is to say low vibrational tendencies that are still resident within me, a lot of that will get sussed out when you're in the company of somebody who's carrying a matching or higher vibration. And so, which is to say that you could say, okay, Allan, you do this, you do it like when we do a feedback, when we actually reflect on the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
You may be able to see into my blind spots, or you would be able to see into my blind spots better than I could see into my blind spots, right? Because self cannot see self. So, in the context of egoic awareness, you almost always need somebody who has done the work themselves that can go ahead and illuminate for you your low vibrational tendencies.
Absolutely. There's certain principles in this, connected to, spirituality is actually realizing that if you speak about duality and you speak about the idea of a subject and an object, well, the object that's the exterior is always a mirror. There's always a certain reflecting taking place. So whether you have the capacity of self-reflection or not,
It's hard.
there is a feedback loop. And of course, part of the process of, let's say, awakening, raising your vibration, is actually becoming more self-contemplative as well, which actually gives you, which is a great gift on the path because it helps you keep in self-alignment.
Yeah. And so if you've moved far enough along where that introspective, self-reflective quality is abundant and you can see into your low vibrational tendencies, then that's great. But it's still nice, especially earlier on, and even as you go later in the journey, it's still nice to have somebody who's saying, hey, I'm the mirror, and I want to show you what it is that you can't see. And hope that you have the humility to say, I know this is coming from a loving space. I want to receive this feedback and make good of it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, again, that's another subject, the subject of mirrors, for example, because it's also something that happens a lot in the spiritual space. And now we have all kinds of phrasing, spiritual bypassing and all kinds of phrasing coming in about this kind of stuff of saying how you should be. But there are other things to also take into consideration there. It's also another tendency that we can say is related much more to the ego level of consciousness, where we spend a lot of time, staring in the mirror and trying to correct the mirror.
Wow, exactly.
Without actually,
reflection.
Reflecting back inside and saying, hang on, that's showing that, I've got a speck of dirt here I need to tidy up or something. And we're just like, no, hang on, the dirt's there on the mirror. I need to clean the mirror. You need to change, not me.
That's the classic deflection. So that's why I believe when you say, like, why are we coming together? That sort of benefit, which is to say the betterment of Benedict or the betterment of Allan, by virtue of us being in communion through this process, could very well be that this content means actually it's just a diversion, but that there's something that you and I are intended to illuminate for one or the other that's motivating us to come into space.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the humility of this path, is to say, I don't really know what it is that's motivating us to do this. I just know that I like the idea, so I'm going to pursue that which excites me.
When we sat down and proposed this, it was both an inner feeling of there's a certain necessity. Yes, this is right. This is integrated. Let's do this. Let's talk about it in as an authentic and personal way as possible, and frame these conversations within the spiritual teachings, within various knowledge and historical spiritual movements, or whether we talk about yoga, tantra, Taoism, Buddhism, doesn't matter as such. but to actually also give it some of these human experiences certain reference points and certain frameworks to maybe also help people see how to integrate these experiences into their life. And as you said, by doing that process, I always know that these kind of things for me always give me deep insights.
And so then the last question on the list is, how do you anticipate things will unfold, and how do you know if it's going well? I guess we've kind of answered that as well. We don't really
So.
Yeah. measure it. We're just going to feel into it. And if it continues to give us joy, we'll continue to do it. And if the time comes that it feels more laborious than it is just joyous, well, that's our indication that it's run its course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure it's going to evolve over time as well. I mean, it's if we're doing this and we're talking about, say, human evolution, then by its very nature, there should be an evolution in, let's say, the deepening of our understanding, the broadening of our understanding, and also our ability to connect and communicate between ourselves and also with whatever audience is inspired to listen to it. So
we'll see. Benny, this is great. I think it's a good first start. Of all the subjects that we had on our list, this is the one that interested me the least. Everything else is actually much more interesting. But unless you have something else to add, I think we can just say farewell to you and then go on to the next discussion accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much that. Yeah, this is it. This is just a kind of brief resume or outline, if you like, of what we're hoping to do and achieve with this channel, and help to reach out to more people and actually really create a connection. I think this is what it is like actually using the medium of technology and internet in a beneficial way to create more connection between people who find themselves in this, for want of a better word, spiritual space, or at least contemplating the spiritual space in some way.
Yeah, and who knows where that leads.
Exactly.
Entire communities form online and then maybe even come together in the flesh as a result.
Where's it going to take us? We have no idea, but let's see. Yeah. So,
beautiful.
Great.
All right, everyone. So thank you all for coming for our first discussion, and we hope to see you again soon.